program is the Active Center.
All right, let's talk about a guy who basically wrote the rule book for our modern economy, Adam Smith. He's known as the father of modern economics, and honestly, that's not an exaggeration. His ideas from way back in the 1700s literally built the world we're all living in today. So let's dive in.
To really get Smith, you have to start with a question that sounds completely backwards. What if acting in your own best interest, being a little selfish, could actually be the best thing for everybody else? It sounds crazy, right? But this is the exact puzzle that Adam Smith helps us figure out.
So who exactly was this guy? It's so easy to just picture some dusty figure from a history book, but Adam Smith was a true revolutionary. He was a thinker who came along and completely changed how we think about pretty much everything: money, business, and even right and wrong.
So get this, Smith was from Scotland, and he was a total prodigy. I mean, going to university at just 14 years old? Becoming a professor by 27? That's wild. But what was really important about him wasn't just how smart he was, it was his attitude. He looked at the accepted ideas of his time and just questioned them. He wasn't afraid to say, hey, maybe we've got this all wrong.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Before he was the father of economics, he was actually a philosopher, completely fascinated by what makes us tick as human beings. So his first huge book, it had nothing to do with money. It was all about morality.
Yeah, back in 1759, in his book The Theory of Moral Sentiments, Smith basically said that we humans are a walking contradiction. On the one hand, yeah, of course we're driven by self-interest, but he argued that's not the whole story. We also have this internal moral compass, a kind of empathy that stops us from being totally selfish all the time.
He had this cool name for it, the impartial spectator. You can think of it as that little voice in your head, right? Your conscience. It's what lets you step outside yourself and think, was that the right thing to do? So for Smith, being human is this constant tug of war between our desire to get ahead and our built-in sense of what's right. And you got to remember this because it's key to what comes next.
Okay, now we jump ahead 17 years. Smith takes everything he knows about human nature and applies it to the economy in his absolute masterpiece, The Wealth of Nations. And this book introduces one of the most powerful and famous ideas in history, the invisible hand.
So what on earth is the invisible hand? Well, the core idea is this. When everyone in a free market is just trying to do what's best for themselves, they unintentionally and almost magically end up benefiting the entire community. It's like they're being guided by, well, an invisible hand.
He explained this with a super simple, brilliant example. Think about your local butcher. He's not selling you meat because he's a nice guy and wants you to have a good dinner. No way. He's doing it to make a profit for himself. But, and this is the important part, to get your business and make that profit, he has to sell you good meat at a price you're willing to pay. The result? He makes his money and you get dinner. It's a win-win, and it all happened because of self-interest, not charity.
And that is the core of it. Now, just imagine that one transaction happening millions of times, with millions of different people and products. What you get is a market that basically runs itself. It figures out prices and supplies all on its own, with no one person in charge directing the whole show.
This idea leads straight to the philosophy of laissez-faire, which is just a fancy French term for let it be or leave it alone. Smith's argument was that for this invisible hand to work its magic, governments really needed to take a step back. Things like crazy taxes, regulations, and special favors for certain companies, he saw them as chains holding the economy back. For him, real prosperity comes when people are free to make their own choices.
But believe it or not, Smith wasn't done yet. He also came along and completely changed the answer to a really basic question. What actually makes a country rich?
See, before Smith, the main theory was something called mercantilism. The idea was simple. A nation's wealth was just how much gold and silver it had locked up in a vault. Smith showed up and said, nope, you're looking at it all wrong. He argued a country's true wealth isn't a static pile of treasure. It's the flow. It's the total sum of everything its people produce and trade.
And if that sounds familiar, it should. That concept he came up with is the direct ancestor of what we now call gross domestic product, or GDP. Seriously, every single time you hear on the news that the economy is growing, you're hearing an echo of an idea Adam Smith put on paper back in 1776.
So why does any of this 200-year-old stuff matter to us today? Well, because Smith's ideas didn't just stay in books. They went out and built the world. The foundations of modern capitalism, they come right from him, and they shape our lives every single day.
His influence is just massive. The wealth of nations lands and sets off a chain reaction. It shapes the thinking of the next wave of economists, it inspires free market champions like Milton Friedman in the 20th century, and today it's still the absolute bedrock of modern free market theory.
And this isn't just theory for a classroom. The concepts of supply and demand, of competition, of free trade, all things Smith championed, they have a direct impact on the price you pay for coffee, on the types of jobs available in your town, and on the huge, interconnected global economy that we are all a part of.
Which leaves us with one last massive question. In our modern world, with all its complexities, global corporations, intricate financial markets, and huge challenges like climate change, is Adam Smith's invisible hand still the right guide for us? That's a question economists and all of us are still trying to answer today.